Hello again, whiskey friends. Thanks for joining everybody for another whiskey review. Today we are going to be talking about from Evernorth Spirits, the Spirit Walker. Now, this is specifically batch 2. Man, look at that thing. Look at those colors pop. That label's pretty hot. So, we are talking about the Spirit Walker batch 2. Now, if you aren't familiar with this brand, with this label, this is coming from the Bourbon Junkies, who have their own YouTube channel, been following them for years now on this crazy adventure. And this one was very interesting because it dropped on their site at the same time as an E.H. Taylor single barrel, caused a whole lot of stir. I've got a whole lot of thoughts on that. Maybe I'll save that for the end of this rant that I might go on. But when I opened up my box and I got to taste the Spirit Walker here, that was a gem. And I wanted to talk about it more in this review format. So thank you for joining today, whiskey friends. Let's kick off the show. All right, let's pull the stats on this one. So with this Evernorth Spirit Walker batch 2, I did get to try batch 1. Had a whiskey friend join me on my porch. Brought all these bottles for Evernorth. I got a whole run through. Man, what I learned off of that particular tasting was like, oh yeah, I need to buy the Spirit Walker 2 when it comes out. And I did. So it cost $79. Got it from Bourbon Outfitter. And as I said, it was something that I put in my cart with an E.H. Taylor single barrel, which we'll talk about at the end. Proof on this one, 115, but it's non-age stated. Now, it is a Bourye of MGP whiskey. So MGP bourbons, MGP ryes blended together, but then finished in honey barrels, ex-bourbon casks, and Amburana wood, which I kind of imply means they put staves or something in the ex-bourbon barrels with Amburana. But either way, they blended those two together. I think that's a brilliant concept. The Penelope Rio is another brand that did something very similar. I know some people think Amburana might be played out. I am still a fan of all the Amburana and that cinnamon goodness, but I also understand some people turned off from it. Man, some of the notes that I get from people when they taste Amburana, whew, they are kind of turn off notes. I don't get any of those. I get all smiles. But for me, going into this, I had some preconceived notions. It's a Bourye, so it's a blend of bourbon and rye. And top of mind for me, I think Amburana goes better with a rye than it does a bourbon. But I think honey goes better with a bourbon than it does a rye. So watching all of this blend together with those preconceived notions in my head probably leads to some of my thoughts and flavor notes and everything that we're going to go through. But I already thought that, and yeah, the combination then shines and didn't disappoint. So we're going to go through the nose, we're going to go through the palate, we're going to go through the finish. I'll give you whether I thought it was thumbs up, thumbs down, all the way through this thing, and then we'll get into the final scores. So thank you for joining today, whiskey friends. Cheers, everybody. Oh, yeah. Getting all that cinnamon toast crunch right off the bat mixed with that honey. All right. Nose, thumbs up, and let me explain why here. So I get the Amburana on this one. I guess what I appreciate the most with the finishing that's going on here and the blend, I get the MGP too. So there is like this ginger snap cookie, which is one of the markers I have for MGP in general. That's shining through. It's coming through with the graham cracker, which I get on MGP quite a bit as well. But there's a citrus note here. If I dig a little deeper, now once again, I got to get like beyond that Amburana. It reminds me a lot of like a lemon bar that has that buttery crust underneath it. You got like the lemon custard in the middle, and then it's covered in powdered sugar. In the end, though, I mean, the takeaway from this, immense sweetness, some citrus, some fruits, and a whole lot of cinnamon. So let's get into the palate here. Palate also gave it a thumbs up. We'll explain why. Mm. Oh man, fabulous, rich, oily mouthfeel all the way around. Ooh, this finish is actually pretty intense. I'm gonna have to talk through this thing a few times. Up front, that cinnamon and honey is what shines through. I mean, that finish shines through. It's hard to get around that ambarana up front. That's why it triggers us so much if we get something ambarana finish blind. But it goes toe and toe and the yin yang with that honey. There's darkness there though too, like clove, barrel char. So it is balanced that way between the brightness and the sweetness, and some barrel char and some clove. Uh, Fruit wise, still leaning towards lemon, mostly bright leaning fruits. If not straight citrus, we're getting into apples then. So that shines through. Lots of fruit undertones on this blend, honestly. Um, let's go in for one more sip. Oh gosh, cinnamon punching me in the face. Yeah, that Ambarana just wallops you mid palate. So if you are not a fan of Ambarana, uh, I mean, you are already probably checked out of this anyway. You heard the word Ambarana and you probably had twitches. But no, that Ambarana really comes through. But the underlying whiskey is there too. I think that's the thing that I always now keep an eye on when something is Ambarana finished, is if I can taste the underlying whiskey with that Ambarana too, if they play together rather than one just dominating the other. So, yeah, lots of barrel char, rye spice, lemon, apple, fruitiness, all in that range. So you can kind of hear what I'm describing there, but mostly bright leaning, with that honey, with the Ambarana, with the apples, with the lemon, I'm saying, all those things. All right, let's get into the finish. Now, with the finish, as I said, I'm having problems talking through it. 2 thumbs up on the finish. Oh man, the finish is where it blossoms. It all comes together. It all comes together on the finish. The dark honeys actually take center stage over the Ambarana. So by the time you get to the finish, that honey finish comes through versus the Ambarana. Dark honey, oh so good. On top of graham crackers, uh, little rye spice, little pepper, lemon and apple again. I'm still leaning lemon and apple when it comes to the fruits. So I guess that's consistent throughout there. And then, man, the longer the finish goes on, it darkens up a little bit. It's still a dark honey, but barrel char, some darker berries come through. Man, that honey shines on the finish. How can you not smile when you're eating honey? And the finish just goes on and on and on. I mean, I'm still tasting it now. I'm still tasting honey as I've been trying to talk through for the last 30 seconds here, going through the finish. That's kind of one of the funny things about doing these type of reviews, is when the finish is so overwhelming and it's just like, no, no, keep talking. Keep talking. So, all in all, I know I summarized that with a whole bunch of thumbs up, but we have a whole bunch of metrics behind the scenes on the channel, 10 metrics to be exact. Summarize it as a flavor score, an experience score, and a value score. Flavor score is how delicious those flavors are. Experience score is more about the complexity, the length of the finish, the mouthfeel. It's a technical score, more or less. And then value score, happy about the price paid. So flavor score, giving it an 80 out of 100, essentially gave it 8s across the board every step of the way. Experience score, love the finish. I think the finish brought that experience score up. It also brings it up to that 2 thumbs up on the finish. But it got 84% of the points on the finish. And then the value score, I'm going to keep buying these at 79. They're keeping the prices at a good range, especially for the experience that they're offering. Thus, all's the points, 100%. That summarizes then into an 84 out of 100. which ranks 14 out of 49. If you'd asked me 5 years ago if I'd be talking about this subject about the bourbon junkies, that would not have been the case. But now here we are, and we got to recognize that. And if they're hitting like this now, hey, we'll see on the next blend and the next blend and the next blend. For reference, though, all time, 62 out of 207. So we're talking about an upper third of the pours on my shelf right now. I think this thing is absolutely delicious. So those are my thoughts on the Spirit Walker. I'm going to go for just another minute here. What I thought was so interesting about this particular release is that it released side by side with an E.H. Taylor single barrel. Now, the reason that the Junkies got an E.H. Taylor single barrel is all convoluted. Buffalo Trace lost their Eagle Rare barrel and let them get a E.H. Taylor single barrel. And I am one of the lucky ones that got my hands on said E.H. Taylor single barrel. Popped it open. Man, delicious nose. Love it. Never had an E.H. Taylor single barrel before, so not going to hate on an E.H. Taylor single barrel. Opened up this Spirit Walker about half hour later, and I was like, oh, this is the gem of the box. I like this better than the E.H. Taylor single barrel. So take that as you will. But I think that's a reminder, though, because there was a whole lot of people that were hurt that they didn't get the E.H. Taylor single barrel, blaming website, blaming bots, all those type of things. Unnecessary. Regardless, at the same time, they released this. And this was actually the gem of the two from my perspective. So don't judge things by labels. And man, just know that everyone in this community right now is doing some pretty amazing things. And man, it's kind of a golden era of the whiskeys that I'm getting my hands on. And so many of them now are either picked by people I know or blended by people I know. It's kind of like freaking me out a little bit in that regard, but I'm still going to talk about great whiskey anyway, whether I know the person or not. So thank you for joining me today, whiskey friends. If you got the Spirit Walker, which I know many of you did, because we talked about this on a live and everyone was like, oh yeah, that Spirit Walker's good. Let us know what you think in the comments and we'll catch you on the next whiskey review. Goodbye, everybody.
Jeff, just be friends with me. But you have these whiskey friends and you say hello again. Oh, Jeffrey, you should just be friends with me. But you have these whiskey friends and you say hello again. Oh, Jeffrey, you should just be friends with me. But you have